September 1, 1939. The German invasion of Poland ignited the Second World War, but even as the storm gathered and then broke over Europe, a hidden conflict was already underway, a war of shadows and secrets far from the front lines. This is the story of Fort Hunt, Virginia. A seemingly innocuous site just miles from the front lines, Destroyer-Kupferfeature, capital and the Pentagon. It was here that America waged a highly classified intelligence war, a complex and morally ambiguous undertaking that would shape the course of the conflict. For decades, this chapter of history remained largely untold, a testament to the deep secrecy that shrouded its operations. Only in the late 1990s, with the slow declassification of documents, did glimpses of Fort Hunt's true purpose begin to emerge. Historians with the National Park Service uncovered a crucial piece of this puzzle in 2006. The chance discovery of a former operative named Fred Michel unlocked a torrent of buried memories. His eventual willingness to speak despite an oath of lifelong silence catalyzed a systematic oral history project between 2006 and 2010. Over 65 World War II veterans, interrogators, translators, analysts finally shared their experiences. These revelations began to challenge a long-held view that wartime intelligence was solely the domain of established military structures. Instead, Fort Hunt revealed the critical role of covert operations and the invaluable contributions of unexpected personnel. At its heart, Fort Hunt's mission was twofold: to gather vital intelligence from high-value German prisoners and to aid Allied airmen and TOAs in escape and evasion. It accomplished this through programs like Miss X, focused on crafting equipment and strategies for escape, and Mrs. Y, which specialized in interrogation and electronic surveillance. The naval equivalent, OP-16Z, ran similar operations. A third pillar, the Military Intelligence Research Service, Myers translated and analyzed captured German documents, producing critical reports such as the Order of Battle of the German Army, known simply as the Red Book. But perhaps the most striking aspect of Fort Hunt's intelligence operation was its personnel. Many of the interrogators and analysts were not career military officers. They were German or Austrian Jews who had fled Nazi persecution. Recruited for their language skills and profound understanding of the enemy, these refugees found a unique path to actively combat the regime they had been forced to escape. Their methods often involved sophisticated psychological tactics, never resorting to physical violence. This contrasts sharply with common perceptions of wartime interrogation. These individuals, often haunted by the fate of families left behind in Europe, provided invaluable support that contributed directly to the Allied victory. Their sacrifices and their contributions remained largely unacknowledged for decades. The story of Fort Hunt is deeply rooted in the very landscape it occupies. Long before it became a secret intelligence hub, this land was part of George Washington's Mount Vernon estate. It was specifically known as River Farm. In the year 1760, Washington acquired River Farm, an expansive 1,806 acres, for a sum of PS1 210, a significant investment partially funded by Martha's inheritance. Washington, often seen as solely a military and political leader, was also a pioneering farmer. He approached agriculture with scientific rigor, experimenting with over 60 different crops including wheat, corn, and hemp. He planted Siberian melatop, sainfoy, and burnet, innovative forage crops to enrich the soil and feed his livestock. Yet, even his meticulous management could not overcome the inherent challenges of the era. After his death, shortly after detailing his final management plan on December 10, April 1799, the once thriving agricultural enterprise faltered. By 1834, an observer lamented the widespread and perfect agricultural ruin that had befallen the divided lands, while Mount Vernon itself was heroically preserved by the Mount Vernon Ladies Association through Anne Pamela Cunningham's national fundraising efforts, securing $200,000 by 1859. River Farm's fate would take a different, more strategic turn. Approximately 150 years after Washington's death, this pastoral landscape would be repurposed for national defense. The catalyst arrived with the sobering lessons of the American Civil War. The breach of masonry forts, like Fort Pulaski in 1862 by field artillery, demonstrated the vulnerability of existing coastal defenses. In 1886, the Endicott Board, chaired by Secretary of War William C. Endicott, recommended a massive $127 expenditure to modernize America's coastal fortifications. Fort Hunt was conceived as part of this ambitious Endicott system. Its strategic location on the Virginia side of the Potomac opposite Fort Washington was chosen to guard the nation's capital. The government acquired roughly 300 acres. Plans were completed in 1896, construction began in 1897, and by 1899 Fort Hunt was operational. It housed 3 8-inch rifles on disappearing carriages at Battery Mount Vernon, 2 5-inch rapid-fire guns at Batteries Robinson and Porter, and later Battery Sater. Manned by the 47th Company of the Coast Artillery Corps, its personnel never exceeded 80 to 120 men. However, the rapid march of technology soon rendered these massive investments obsolete. The Wright brothers' first successful flight in 1903 signaled the dawn of air power, a threat fixed coastal artillery could not counter. By World War I, many of Fort Hunt's guns were repurposed or scrapped. It stands as a powerful example that massive investments in military hardware can have limited long-term utility against unforeseen technological advancements. The fort found new, albeit temporary, roles housing troops, serving as a finance school, and hosting ROTC training for Howard and Wilberforce universities in the 1920s and 30s. The construction of the George Washington Memorial Parkway between 1929 and 1932 further integrated the site into the fabric of the region. Then the Great Depression struck. By 1933, unemployment soared to 25%. The stock market had lost nearly 90% of its value, and 11,000 banks had failed. In 1932, approximately 20,000 World War I veterans, known as the Bonus Army, marched on Washington, D.C., demanding immediate payment of deferred bonuses. President Herbert Hoover, in a controversial move, ordered the creation of a 300-bed hospital at Fort Hunt to assist the veterans, but the situation escalated when General Douglas MacArthur, allegedly disobeying Hoover's orders, commanded troops and tanks to clear the veterans' camps, culminating in the torching of the Anacostia Flats shantytown. The political fallout was immense. Franklin D. Roosevelt, Hoover's successor, took a different approach. In 1933, he offered housing at Fort Hunt for 3,000 Bonus Army veterans and jobs in his newly established Civilian Conservation Corps. All but 350 of these veterans accepted the CCC jobs and remained at Fort Hunt, a testament to the program's immediate success in providing employment and stability. This pragmatic repurposing of a former military installation for social welfare highlights Fort Hunt's remarkable adaptability and its deep connection to major national events and societal needs. By 1933, Fort Hunt had transitioned from military fort to a Civilian Conservation Corps camp designated NP6 under the National Park Service. Here, thousands of young unemployed men, including approximately 25,000 World War I veterans among the 2.5 million CCC enrollees nationwide, found purpose and opportunity. They built drainage systems, stabilized stream banks, planted trees, and constructed picnic shelters, leaving a lasting legacy of conservations and infrastructures into Bixstreeding and Intrester. The camp even hosted dignitaries. In 1938, Anthony Eden visited. Then, on June 9, 1939, Fort Hunt welcomed King George VI and Queen Elizabeth. Eleanor Roosevelt recounted the King's genuine interest in the CCC enrollees, inquiring about their food, education, earnings, and future job prospects. The camp newspaper, Happy Days, proudly proclaimed, "King and Queen get chummy with men at CCC inspection." Yet beneath this facade of peaceful progress and royal charm, the world was rapidly descending into chaos. Within 3 months of the royal visit, Hitler invaded Poland. And 2 years later, on December 7, 1941, the attack on Pearl Harbor shattered America's isolation. This pivotal event directly triggered Fort Hunt's rapid transformation into a vital top-secret military installation. Initially, the renovated underground artillery magazines were used by the National Archives for storing highly flammable and toxic nitrate film, though moisture soon became an issue. But by May 15, 1942, under a special use permit, Fort Hunt was formally established as a joint interrogation center. It was cloaked in such intense secrecy that its true identity was reduced to a simple mailing address. P.O. Box 1142. Vehicles had blacked-out windows. Access was tightly controlled. This was a place designed to disappear from public knowledge. Post-war, numerous proposals for golf courses, recreational venues and equestrian centers were floated for Fort Hunt. Ultimately, it became the national park we know today, with picnic pavilions, trails, and ball fields. But its most critical chapter remained hidden. It took decades for the truth to begin surfacing. In 2005, Ranger Dana Dierks, leading historical tours, started hearing whispers from visitors. Her initiative, bolstered by Matthew Laird's By the River Potomac and Lloyd Shoemaker's The Escape Factory, began the painstaking process of uncovering Fort Hunt's secret World War II history. A chance connection with Fred Michael, a former interrogator who happened to be a neighbor of a park employee, led to his groundbreaking interviews in May 2006. His testimony was the key that unlocked a treasure trove of personal stories. Many of these stories belonged to Jewish refugees who had fled the escalating persecution in Europe. Individuals like George Weidinger, who at just 15 years old in March 1938 was expelled from school in Heitzig, Austria for being Jewish despite his family having converted to Christianity before his birth. Rudi Pins, born in Hochstadt, Germany, in 1920, experienced discrimination by 1933 and was banned from school field trips by spring 1934. He left Germany in 1939, his last impression of his homeland being soldiers marching down Market Street. He arrived in Cleveland struggling to communicate with a foster family who spoke Yiddish, a language he did not understand. Then there was Gunther Stern, who would later be known as Guy. Born in Hildesheim, Germany in 1922, he witnessed the purge of positive achievements by Jews from his school curriculum. His father, Julius Stern, an eternal optimist, tried to shield him. At 15 in 1937, Gunther emigrated with a visa and an English tutor to live with his uncle Benno in St. Ones, Louis. The financial stability of his uncle was proven by friends' deposits, a testament to the desperate measures required for emigration. Tragically, his father Julius, mother Hedwig, and siblings Eleanor and Werner were deported to Warsaw in April 1942, likely perishing in the Warsaw Ghetto or Auschwitz. These individuals and others like Arno Meyer, who grew up in Luxy invasion, would become indispensable. Their journeys of survival and their subsequent willingness to serve reveal the devastating human cost of persecution and the profound resilience of those who sought refuge. They illustrate how, from seemingly ordinary places, extraordinary stories can emerge, and why the preservation of oral histories is critical to understanding the full scope of past events. The paths that led these individuals to Fort Hunt were forged in the crucible of escalating Nazi persecution. In Germany and Austria, the rise of Hitler and increasingly aggressive anti-Semitism began to systematically dismantle Jewish lives. It challenged the notion that World War I veterans or respected community members were immune to this threat. Figures like Ernest Solomon's father, despite his standing, would ultimately have to flee. For many, the illusion of safety shattered abruptly. On November 9, 1938, Kristallnacht, the Night of Broken Glass, erupted across Germany. Nazi stormtroopers, the Hitler Youth, and other collaborators destroyed Jewish businesses, homes, and synagogues. Over 30,000 German Jewish men were rounded up and sent to concentration camps. The pretext for this orchestrated violence was the assassination of Ernst von Rath, a German official in the Paris embassy, by a 17-year-old Jewish-Polish boy. Following Kristallnacht, Nazi laws and decrees relentlessly deprived Jews of their property and livelihoods. Enterprises were transferred to Aryans for a fraction of their value. Jews were barred from almost all jobs, denied schooling, and forbidden from owning cars or using public transport. For Arno Meyer, the Nazi invasion of Luxembourg on May 10, 1940, was a traumatic moment that ended his carefree youth. He experienced firsthand the profound psychological impact of trauma and the constant threat of persecution. The desperate scramble for visas and the peril of escape became central to their stories. Paul Fairbrook's father, for instance, used a valuable stamp collection, including a first-day cover with 4 unused stamps of the Zeppelin Hindenburg disaster, valued at $1,000, to persuade U.S. Naubraud and to persuade USA immigration officials. Peter Weiss's father secured visas only after the Nazis crossed the supposedly impenetrable Maginot Line, a poignant illustration of the collapse of perceived safety. Werner Moritz arrived in Halifax, Nova Scotia, with only the shirt on his back and all of 30 cents in his pocket. Norman Graeber endured 30 days of forced labor and starvation rations in Dachau and later Buchenwald concentration camps. Dieter Kober was even excluded from a swimming event in the 1936 Olympics. Yet, these individuals demonstrated remarkable resilience. They faced the challenges of assimilation, language barriers, and cultural adjustments. Many found solace in education. In New York City, teachers like Mrs. Ivandajason Uruk went to great lengths to help these children assimilate. One teacher observed that refugee students were more serious than our own. A reflection of their profound experiences, some underwent personal transformations, like Arno Mayer, whose name was changed to Arno Joseph Mayer due to a registrar's insistence. The Schonenbach family, upon arriving in the US to help them anointing in the US fastened illustrations, some underwent personal transformations, Bing and changed their name to Fairbrook, a more Americanized version of the German meaning Fair Brook. Werner Moritz, after multiple close calls, earned the nickname Lucky Moritz. These were the experiences that forged a unique understanding of the enemy, making these refugees invaluable assets to the burgeoning American intelligence effort. December 7, 1941. At 2 p.m., 27,000 fans filled Griffith Stadium for a Washington Redskins versus Philadelphia Eagles game. Minutes later, Japan attacked Pearl Harbor. Unbeknownst to the cheering crowds, America had been thrust into a global war. The notion of a completely unprepared public is perhaps misleading, as demonstrated by Alan Lomax's immediate efforts to collect man-on-the-street interviews on December 8. A sentiment for war was already palpable. The attack galvanized the nation and initiated a massive mobilization of resources and personnel. This included individuals like Ernest Salomon, whose family had fled Belgium in May 1940 as the Nazis stormed in, eventually arriving in Havana, Cuba by the summer of 1941. His flight from persecution and subsequent multilingualism would become invaluable assets. By February 1943, the Salomon family was able to fly to Miami, the United States, lacking sophisticated intelligence operations at the war's outset, began to learn quickly. From June to December 1941, Navy team diligently studied British intelligence systems, particularly MI9 and MI19, which provided models for interrogating prisoners and gathering intelligence. The need for secure, specialized facilities became paramount. On May 6, 1942, Major General George V. de Visden, Strong, Director of Military Intelligence, formally requested Fort Hunt as an interrogation center. Just 9 days later, on May 15, the War Department obtained a special use permit. Construction began in early June. Under the extraordinary leadership of construction supervisor Howard Nottingham, the facility, costing $221,000, was completed in an astonishing 6 weeks by July 22, 1942. This rapid construction capability underscored wartime urgency and innovation, a feat echoed by the Pentagon's own construction in a mere 16 months between 1941 and 1943. Fort Hunt, or P.O. Box 1142, was now ready, but it was not the only secret intelligence center. Camp Tracy, designated P.O. Box 651, became operational in December 1942. It housed Japanese prisoners of war until September 1945. Here, interrogators utilized modified hotel rooms with dropped ceilings for concealed listening devices. Lieutenant Colonel Alex Corbin chronicled Camp Tracy's methods, which often involved starting interrogations at a lower severity level, a deliberate tactic to allow for severity-level deliberate tactics interrogations at a lowest. Crucially, Camp Tracy relied on Nisei Japanese Americans as primary interrogators, their linguistic and cultural fluency proving indispensable. This strategic use of diverse human capital was a hallmark of American intelligence. In 1943, a critical shift occurred for German Jewish refugees. Individuals like Rudy Pins, Paul Fairbrook, Guy Stern, and Werner Moritz, initially classified as enemy aliens, had their status altered to 1A, making them draft eligible. This enabled them to actively contribute to the war effort through military service. Their journey, marked by fleeing persecution, now led them to confront the very regime that had shattered their lives. For programs like MISX, which focused on escape and evasion, ingenuity was paramount. They used everyday objects like baseballs and cribbage boards to conceal radios, money, and escape tools for downed airmen. The story of a surrendered Japanese sailor speaking of waveless torpedoes hints at the kind of technological secrets these centers sought to uncover. These dedicated intelligence operations demonstrated how individuals, even those once considered enemy aliens, could become vital contributors to America Their unique linguistic and cultural knowledge proved to be an advantage that traditional military structures simply could not replicate. The United States military, faced with the urgent need for actionable intelligence from captured prisoners, had to navigate the strictures of the core. Geneva Convention. This international agreement prohibited physical or mental torture, nor any other form of coercion during interrogations, forcing a reliance on psychological tactics. Early on, the scale of this challenge varied greatly. Interrogating 3 survivors from a U-boat like U-67 was manageable. But then came 49 survivors from U-162, a logistical strain that underscored the need for a systematic approach. Crucially, the availability of German-speaking Americans, many of whom were Jewish refugees fleeing Nazi persecution, provided an unparalleled advantage. These individuals, often serving as first-level interrogators, possessed an inherent understanding of German culture and language, a resource that could not be quickly replicated. The intelligence infrastructure rapidly expanded to meet these needs. P.O. Box 1142, Fort Hunt, Virginia, became a primary site for interrogating German U-boat survivors and later other high-value prisoners. It was not designed for large-scale holding. Instead, initial assessments and transfers were handled at facilities like Pine Grove Furnace, Pennsylvania, which processed around 7,000 German POWs between May 1943 and November 1945. The Nerve Center for Intelligence Training was Camp Ritchie, Maryland. Established in June 1942, it trained over 15,000 men, including 2,200 Jewish refugees, in diverse intelligence disciplines. The training was rigorous. An initial 8-week general course covered everything from aerial photo interpretation and hand-to-hand combat to counterintelligence and communications, with a heavy concentration on the German military establishment. Trainees intensely studied the order of battle of the German army, the crucial Red Book, and its Pacific counterpart, the Green Book. This detailed knowledge was essential for demonstrating expertise to prisoners. Simulated interrogation environments were created using German-American actors and fabricated German military scenarios, complete with mock rallies and cardboard German vehicles. The intensity of the training earned it the nickname Military Institute of Total Confusion, or MITC. Early instructor George Frenkel, who had been assigned to P.O. Box 1142, designed the training to be a living hell to test recruits' resilience. The philosophy of interrogation was guided by experts like Sanford Griffith, a World War I veteran who viewed it as a blend of 75% science and 25% science use and 25%. Encouraging interrogators to put himself in the prisoner's shoes, they were taught to avoid ingrained hatred of Nazis, to build trust by assuring safety, to probe religious beliefs, and to exploit ego and the desire to survive. Master Sergeant Paul Kubala, a German immigrant fluent in 5 languages, became an instructor at Camp Ritchie and a prolific interrogator at Fort Hunt, personally interrogating over 2,700 Germans. Trainees like Guy Stern understood the value of the Red Book, knowing that demonstrating more knowledge about a prisoner's unit than they did was a powerful way to elicit cooperation. The trainee scenarios pushed boundaries. Trainees had to navigate woods at night with only a compass. They were exposed to live weapons fire to win states' cooperation, distinguish between enemy and friendly aircraft and artillery. They faced mock prisoners who would deliberately confuse them with idioms like Gulasch Kanon, testing their ability to remain unrattled. But the challenges extended beyond training. German-American soldiers faced the unique danger of being mistaken for German infiltrators disguised in American uniforms, especially during the Battle of the Bulge. This led to harsh vetting procedures and tragic incidents. The profound personal impact of the war was underscored even in the supposedly safe confines of Camp Ritchie. The news of President Roosevelt's death was met with tragic loss by the European Jewish trainees, while German powers at the camp celebrated with joyful abandon. This complex moral and strategic landscape of wartime intelligence highlighted how individuals forged in the fires of persecution could become key operatives, contributing directly to the defeat of the regime that had forced them to flee. At the core of Fort Hunt's mission was the intricate art of interrogation. The value of native German speakers was paramount, as fluency in the language was an almost impossible skill to teach rapidly. This naturally led to the recruitment of individuals like Ernest Rosenthal and Hans Speer, German Jewish refugees who volunteered for military intelligence. Speer, after initial disappointment with his classification as an enemy alien, found his true calling as a highly effective interrogator. Their unique backgrounds and profound detestation of Nazism made them invaluable assets. Classroom training at Camp Ritchie, as described by George Frenkel, prepared these men for the psychological battle ahead. Interrogators often wore uniforms without rank insignia or adopted the prisoner's rank to foster a sense of shared experience and encourage responsiveness. They employed dozens of tricks but never resorted to beating prisoners. A particularly potent psychological tactic was the Kommissar Krukov ruse. German-American interrogators like Guy Stern and Fred Howard would don Red Army uniforms complete with medals and even a signed photograph of Joseph Stalin. The objective was to terrify prisoners into believing they were about to be turned over to the brutal Soviet forces. This threat of Russia was a consistent interrogation tactic that leveraged the deep-seated German fear of fighting Russians, a fear explicitly voiced by Corporal Walter Koyen-Schenner, an Eastern Front veteran. Werner Angris, a German Jewish refugee and 82nd Airborne paratrooper, who himself had been captured and then liberated, became an interrogator embodying the complex narratives of those who served. The insights gained from these interrogations were often granular, yet strategically vital. When questioning a U-boat prisoner, Johann Maike, a seaman first class on U-210 captured in August 1942, interrogators Wayne Spangler and Montfort Fee, Melchior uncovered valuable details about interwar German sentiment and their treatment of POWs. Interrogators used tactical information gleaned from previous captures, referencing specific torpedo detonator types, or even knowing that watch officers were effectively acting as commanders. This created a powerful sense of omniscience. They even exploited personal records, like cards from brothel visits, to create a disorienting illusion of knowing everything about a prisoner. Captain Werner Henke, commander of U-515, a highly decorated but arrogant U-boat captain, provided crucial intelligence on naval innovations, including more sophisticated radar and a new automatic 37mm gun. Despite sinking 28 ships grossing nearly 180,000 tons, his capture in April 1944 and subsequent interrogation at Fort Hunt in May ended tragically with his fatal escape attempt on June 15, 1944. Even after the war, the intelligence mission continued. Gustav Hilger, a German national with extensive knowledge of the Soviet Union, underwent a nearly 9-month interrogation. His insights into Soviet military and governmental structures proved critical for shaping post-war American policy. He confirmed that German Foreign Minister Joachim von Ribbentrop had gravely misjudged Soviet military strength. Hilger's intelligence, summarized in 1945, remained vital for decades, even after his return to West Germany in 1953, until his death in 1965. The unwavering commitment of individuals like Rudy Pins, initially classified as an enemy alien, who became a highly effective interrogator at Fort Hunt, underscores the profound impact of these non-combatants in winning the war. Their efforts not only gathered crucial intelligence but also challenged the notion that all German soldiers were ardent Nazis and proceeded, revealing many were disillusioned and susceptible to cooperation, especially when faced with the dreaded Russian threat. The effectiveness of Allied intelligence was critically dependent on extracting insights into Germany's technological capabilities, its military weaknesses, and its evolving political landscape. This directly impacted the course of the war and set the stage for post-war geopolitical strategies. Interrogation data from Fort Hunt provided granular details. Prisoners revealed, for instance, how German engineers analyzed metal alloys from downed American aircraft to improve their own planes. They detailed German artillery shells with their soft, quote, hollow lead noses and thermite, designed to spread and cling to metal surfaces. And critically, they revealed the Russian countermeasure, a layer of concrete on their tanks to resist these thermite shells. In February 1943, the interrogation of Corporal Walter Kohen-Leffner, a veteran of the Eastern Front, provided the first detailed insights into the formidable German Mark 6 Tiger tank. He described its 88mm cannon, its barrel at least 4 meters long, its iron tracks, and its estimated 12-centimeter thick armor. This information allowed Captain Paul Kubala to confirm details that profoundly shaped Allied counter-development. Kohen-Leffner also shattered a common misconception that German soldiers universally preferred fighting Western allies over Russians. His testimony indicated a significant fear of fighting the Soviets. His insights into Soviet combat capabilities, fundamentally altered Allied perceptions, moving beyond initial skepticism to acknowledge their brutal effectiveness. The Allied coalition with the Soviet Union was truly a marriage of necessity, fraught with private doubts and complex relationships. Intelligence also revealed social vulnerabilities within Germany. There was the roving dudes youth movement in Essen defying Nazi dictates, and resentment among German workers due to the low wages paid to imported Ukrainian laborers, all potentially reducing industrial efficiency. POW surveys from Fort Hunt provided quantifiable evidence of declining German morale. The belief in winning the war plummeted from 55 out of 112 prisoners in June 1944 to just 5 out of 67 by September. The impact of strategic bombing campaigns was also confirmed through interrogations. The destruction of the Krupp crankshaft factory in Essen in October 1942, killing over 200 employees and forcing its relocation to Berndorf, Austria, was validated. Interrogators learned how German U-boat pens were cleverly disguised and how railways adapted to load and unload at road crossings after stations and yards were bombed. The large ball-bearing plant in Schweinfurt was identified and subsequently destroyed. The most chilling revelations came from the interrogation of scientists like George Mandel, a German-born chemist. He became an expert on German jets, rockets, and the nascent nuclear program. He described German jet aircraft as far superior to Allied counterparts and their proximity fuses as more advanced. The sheer scale of their rocket program was terrifying. An estimated 10,000 V-1 and V-2 rockets fired on England, causing over 6,000 deaths. But the most alarming news was the confirmation that German scientists were actively working on enriching uranium, a critical ingredient for a nuclear bomb. This triggered immediate high-level concern. The intense focus on acquiring German scientific expertise directly foreshadowed the technological arms race of the Cold War. In late 1944, a German commission decided to send advanced technology to Japan via submarine. On April 15, 1945, U-234 began its voyage. On May 4, it intercepted the German surrender announcement. Admiral Donitz's order for all German ships to surrender followed on May 10. 4 days later, on May 14, 1945, U-234 surrendered to the USS Sutton. Its cargo was a treasure trove, technical drawings, electric torpedoes, a disassembled jet airplane and engine, a glide bomb, and 1,200 pounds of uranium oxide. Earlier, V-1 and V-2 rocket plans had been discovered hidden in a salt cave. This intelligence-driven innovation and acquisition of cutting-edge German technology would provide a significant advantage for the United States in the challenging years to come. Fort Hunt's role as an intelligence hub extended beyond direct interrogations. By late 1941, General Marshall expressed concern about intelligence gaps, recommending the development of an eavesdropping capability. This led to the establishment of Fort Hunt's monitoring program. The Honeysuckle building became the nerve center where teams of typically 12 Americans manned listening posts, monitoring prisoner conversations for extended hours. Primitive recording devices, resembling record players, captured these conversations on discs. Rudi Pins, a German Jewish refugee and monitor, estimated that 65% of his time was spent monitoring, though it yielded only 20% of the most valuable information. The most crucial intelligence, he found, still came from direct interrogations. Yet, even passive surveillance could yield extraordinary results. Werner Moritz, another monitor with a colleague, overheard conversations about Peenemünde and the V-1 and V-2 rockets. This was a crucial intelligence coup, though tragically, it did not reach the right people in time to fully avert their destructive use. Another innovation was the stool pigeon, or SP, program. This involved the recruitment of POWs to gather intelligence from their fellow prisoners. Lieutenant Count Maximilian Koreth, executive officer of U-172, became an SP, motivated by revenge for his father's imprisonment. Werner Drexler, a valuable SP from U-118, provided crucial intelligence but was tragically murdered by fellow POW pros after his service was revealed. The US also learned that you catch more flies with honey than with vinegar. Non-coercive methods, playing games like chess and table tennis, sharing meals, offering cigarettes, and even providing access to women and sailing, proved highly effective. This approach highlighted that strategic interrogation and the exploitation of shared geopolitical interests could often be more fruitful than brutal coercion. The end of the war in Europe presented a unique opportunity to debrief German officers and exploit their knowledge for the ongoing war with Japan and against the emerging Soviet threat. The surrender of U-234, a German submarine, was a pivotal moment. Its cargo included a crated jet airplane for assembly and training in Japan, advanced anti-aircraft guns, and the potential for a radio link between Germany and Japan. Dr. Heinz Schlicke, a German expert in microwave technology, was aboard, offering his expertise and his willingness to aid the US against the Soviets. Captain Fehler, the U-234 commander, even revealed an order to divert to Argentina, defying surrender. Henry Colm, a translator and interrogator, discovered this potential diversion and played a crucial role in interrogating General Kessler. General Kessler, initially accused of ordering the bombing of Amsterdam, which he denied, eventually became highly cooperative. He shared intelligence crucial for the war with Japan and even revealed plans for Axis-Soviet cooperation. These insights were vital for understanding the Soviet military and governmental structures, laying early foundations for Cold War strategy. All this raw intelligence was made actionable by Wayne Spivey's remarkably efficient filing system. Arriving at Fort Hunt in July 1942, as it opened, Spivey created a system categorizing interrogations and monitoring transcripts by subject, interrogator, and date with comprehensive summaries and cross-referencing. This transformed raw data into rapidly retrievable intelligence for Allied bombing runs, identifying the location of ball-bearing plants, rail yard tactics, and disguised submarine pens. Fort Hunt thus established a precedent for sophisticated intelligence gathering through technological surveillance and human intelligence, proving that strategic advantage could be gained by leveraging captured expertise and shared interests. At Fort Hunt, the intelligence officers understood that the mind was often the most effective battlefield. The effectiveness of their operations relied heavily on a diverse range of often unconventional soft interrogation techniques, meticulous document analysis, and strategic psychological manipulation. They challenged the simplistic idea that prisoners were solely broken through physical torture. George Weidinger recalled how interrogators gained confidence by telling prisoners the war was almost over. They provided amenities, offered comforts, and often exploited guilt. One German sergeant, regretting his visits to brothels, eventually spilled the beans about the 10th Panzer Division's route, leading to crucial intelligence. But soft did not mean lenient. Psychological intimidation was a finely honed weapon. POWs were sometimes blindfolded and confined in damp, cold, and dark powder magazines under the gun platforms. The most potent fear-based tactic was the constant threat of being shipped off to the Soviet Union. Russian-American soldiers like Alexander Dalin and Alex Shidlovsky were visibly present to heighten this intimidation. Guy Stern, playing Commissar Krukov in Europe, achieved an 80% success rate with this threat of Russia technique. Then there was Herbert Arndt, a shrewd and ingenious figure who pushed these psychological tactics to their extreme. He would use a vacuum cleaner hose to simulate gas in a confined space, making a Waffen-SS officer talk. A variation involved simulating pesticide gassing. While effective, such methods sometimes earned Arndt a reprimand, yet they yielded vital intelligence. Beyond the direct interrogations, the Military Intelligence Research Section, MIRES, under officers like John Kluge, conducted meticulous document analysis. Between May 1943 and June 1945, they processed an astounding 5,374 mailbags, totaling over 150 tons of captured German documents. The meticulous nature of German record-keeping inadvertently created a rich source of intelligence. MIRES officers, assisted by 19 enlisted men at Fort Hunt, identified erratic German generals and leveraged seemingly trivial documents to understand troop movements and morale. Morale officers like John Gunther Dean, who served at P.O. Box 1142 from October 1944 to August 1946, monitored conversations and ensured confrontations, recognizing that even contented prisoners could reveal valuable information. Arno Meyer, who transferred to Fort Hunt in July 1945, was tasked with keeping German scientists comfortable and assisting them with personal matters, including shopping sprees for their families, costing up to $500. Even General Dwight D. quote, Eisenhower acknowledged the unique nature of Fort Hunt's personnel. When Sergeants Meyer and Leslie Wilson hitchhiked a ride in March 1946, Eisenhower, upon learning their connection to Fort Hunt, signed a letter for them, a small but significant gesture of recognition for their clandestine work. These operations demonstrated that intelligence gathering could prioritize psychological and analytical approaches, providing critical insights that directly impacted military operations, all while challenging the simplistic notion that physical torture was the only recourse in wartime. The meticulous and multifaceted intelligence work conducted by the MIRS, the Military Intelligence Research Section, was perhaps best embodied by the creation of the Red Book. This document provided Allied commanders with unparalleled and accurate insight into the German military, directly influencing strategic decisions and battlefield outcomes. The attack on Pearl Harbor had galvanized individuals like Dieter Kober and Paul Fairbruch, motivating them to contribute to the war effort. Both German Jewish refugees, they were drafted and sent to Camp Ritchie for specialized intelligence training. By 1943, the MIRS program became operational. Its mission was to tackle the overwhelming volume and complexity of captured German documents. The task was clear: create a comprehensive order of battle of the German army. Paul Fairbruch, who initially faced denial of enlistment due to his enemy alien status, became an expert on the German High Command. He documented the German military down to the divisional level. Dieter Kober specialized in divisional units and youth groups. Sergeant Schmidt at Fort Hunt processed incoming sacks of documents, sorting them meticulously by subject. The Red Book was a living document, continually updated daily, as Captain Klug explained. New information from captured documents was translated, drafted, and sent to the Pentagon for revision, ultimately used by generals like Eisenhower and Marshall. The Red Book fundamentally challenged the idea that German military organization was an impenetrable mystery. It revealed that their systematic nature, when analyzed by equally or more systematic Allied intelligence, actually made them trackable. An unexpected treasure trove of information came from the German soldier Sollbuch, or passbook. These individual passports contained pay records, service history, and unit assignments. A specific stamp, like PAR 252, could be cross-referenced with military newspapers to deduce unit actions and awards. Even seemingly mundane details like death notices in German military newspapers could reveal unit locations on the Russian front, as Dieter Kober discovered. The first edition of the Red Book was published in April 1943. The second, issued in February 1944, was the most important, serving as a blueprint for the Normandy invasion. Kober later, at age 88, validated its accuracy by confirming the precise details of his friend's service in the 255th Infantry Regiment during the Battle of Kursk. The assassination attempt on Hitler on July 20, 1944, provoked a profound shift. It triggered an intensification of Nazi political indoctrination and morale-building efforts within the German military. Field Marshal Wilhelm Keitel, under Hitler's direct orders, established National Socialist guidance staff officers in each branch. General Heinz Guderian required all General Staff Corps members to declare dedication to the Nazi Party or resign. Paul Fairbruch's report on political indoctrination meticulously documented these changes. By March 1945, the final, colossal third edition of the Red Book totaled 670 pages, focusing on historical development and demobilization. Beyond the Red Book, MIRS produced other critical color books. The Grey Book, issued in February 1944, tabulated over 10,000 items on military headquarters and installations in Germany. The Yellow Book focused on replacement and training units. And the Green Book, a Japanese order of battle book, was created by Walter Schumann, who self-deprecatingly noted he knew no Japanese, yet his work was validated. These books demonstrated the effectiveness of specialized analysis and the crucial role of non-combatants in winning the war. They provided Allied commanders with a powerful, detailed understanding of their enemy, a distinct advantage in the greatest conflict of their time. Beyond the meticulous analysis of German documents and the psychological chess matches of interrogation, Fort Hunt also spearheaded a vital, often unsung, mission supporting Allied prisoners of war. This was the domain of MIS-X, the Military Intelligence Service X, a program designed to aid Allied personnel in escape and evasion. The sheer desperation of Allied POs spurred the development of innovative communication and support systems. Silvio Bedini, assigned to P.O. Box 1142 in 1942, became the first cryptographer in the U.S. Army at the Creamery Building. He designed a cryptographic system that was brilliantly simple, avoiding complex mathematics by teaching enlisted men to write badly, masking hidden meanings that German interceptors wouldn't suspect. This system was taught to 250 officers who in turn trained 352,000 airmen. It allowed for critical communication with the 95,532 American servicemen who fell into enemy hands. The first recipient of Bedini's coded message was Colonel Albert P. Bud Clark at Stalag Luft III, confirming the system's efficacy. Lawrence Dennis, a poetai, validated the effectiveness of these messages, which provided not just intelligence, but a vital morale boost. They even used coded terms like fort for a B-17 airplane. And Aunt Tilly in Springfield to signal an incoming care package. MySX special care packages contained items like radios embedded in cribbage boards, 20 compasses hidden in chess pieces, and counterfeit German work permits, Reichsmarks and travel passes, have-in chat, ping-pong paddles concealed maps, and checkers game boards held German ration cards. These ingenious items were often mailed from a Baltimore post office to further disguise their origin. Escape and evasion kits included heavy shoes, tiny compasses, thin silk maps, though one pilot found them virtually useless for covering too large an area, giggly surgical saws, signaling mirrors, and even gold coins. These resources were instrumental. William Corey used an MISX map to escape from Oflug 64 in Poland in January 1945. Of the 737 American prisoners who successfully escaped, many did so with Mrs. X's assistance. The legendary Great Escape from Stalag Luft III in March 1943, where 78 prisoners crawled through a 335-foot tunnel, though resulting in the summary execution of more than half, underscores the desperation and ingenuity of Poe W. Silvio Bedini himself believed that the show Hogan's Heroes was not too far off from what really happened. Paul Fairbrook's reports on the German High Command and Dieter Kober's expertise on the Hitler Youth Program, identifying the value of membership cards and newspapers for understanding soldiers' backgrounds, also contributed to this broader intelligence. This hidden front of intelligence operations demonstrated remarkable success, proving that intelligence, dedication, and adaptive innovation were as crucial as any battlefield victory. The end of World War II did not bring an end to the intelligence war. Instead, it transitioned into a new, clandestine phase as the Cold War escalated between the United States and the Soviet Union. Operation Paperclip and subsequent intelligence efforts represented a pragmatic, albeit morally compromised, strategic maneuver to gain a technological and intelligence advantage. The fear that the Soviets would recruit valuable German assets led the US would recruit valuable German assets led the US would recruit. To prioritize acquisition over thorough vetting of past Nazi affiliations. Perhaps the most famous example was Dr. Tabea J. Agesity, Compridge to Time-ENB. Werner von Braun, the leader of the V-2 rocket program. Despite joining the Nazi Party in 1937 and becoming an SS officer, von Braun, along with approximately 1,800 other German scientists, was recruited. He was treated almost like royalty, assigned morale officer Arno Meyer, and transferred first to Fort Bliss, Texas, then to Huntsville, Alabama, to lead the American space program, overseeing the development of the Saturn V rocket. His expertise, along with others like Arthur Louis Hugo Rudolph, who managed the underground V2 factory where an estimated 20,000 of 60,000 slave laborers died, immensely benefited the American space program. This decision to overlook or suppress their Nazi pasts for strategic gain highlights the complex moral landscape of post-war intelligence. While East Germany tried to expose von Braun's Nazi past in the 1960s, it was only later, in 1979, that the U.S. Office of Special Investigations learned of Rudolph's direct management of slave labor. He eventually renounced his U.S. citizenship in 1984. The desire to understand Soviet military capabilities also drove intense interrogation and document collection efforts. Brigadier General Reinhard Gehlen, who managed German Eastern Front intelligence, offered his entire network and documents to the U.S. and Dektorabinius and documents to the U.S. in exchange for sanctuary. He became a key source on the Soviet Union, fundamentally shifting U.S. 9. Intelligence focus. At Fort Hunt, the interrogations continued for high-ranking Nazis. Ambassador Hiroshi Oshima, the Japanese ambassador to Germany, had his intercepted cables declared by General George C. Seas and 20 seconds revealed. Marshall as our main basis of information regarding Hitler's intentions in Europe. General Ulrich Kessler, who initially denied ordering the bombing of Amsterdam, later became cooperative, even revealing Axis-Soviet cooperation plans, crucial intelligence for the war against Japan. Then, there were the truly monstrous figures. Julius Streicher, the notorious anti-Semite and publisher of Der Stürmer, was captured by Werner Moritz, found with a 15-year-old girl. He was tried and hanged for war crimes on October 16, 1946. Hermann Göring, Hitler's heir apparent, with an IQ of 138, surrendered to the Americans on May 6, 1945. Despite portraying himself as cool and calculating and claiming ignorance of racial laws and concentration camps, Göring, the man responsible for widespread atrocities, committed suicide before his execution on October 15, 1946. Werner Moritz, Lucky Moritz, who captured Streicher, also participated in the interrogation of Göring, with Major Paul Kubala serving as interpreter and liaison. The German Military Documents Section, GMDS, processed an estimated 150 tons of materials after the war, providing a comprehensive understanding of the Third Reich's military and administrative structures. These efforts, from recruiting former enemies to meticulous document analysis, reveal the profound complexities of wartime and post-war intelligence. They underscore how strategic advantage was often pursued through deeply pragmatic decisions, leaving a legacy that continues to spark debate about the moral compromises inherent in national security. This pragmatic approach extended far beyond documents, leading to programs like Operation Paperclip. Buster's controversial initiative brought German scientists directly to the US, transforming former adversaries into key contributors to American advancement. Among them was Werner von Braun, a complex figure and former SSSSSS member, whose genius in rocketry was undeniable. His work, developed in an underground rocket facilities, where slaves from the Dora Mittelbau camp toiled, would eventually lead to the mighty two Burb Starning. Another brilliant mind, Kraft Erika, designed the innovative Atlas rocket, further pushing the boundaries of space exploration. These scientists, once part of the Third Reich's war machine, now contributed to America's technological might, a testament to the deep pragmatic decisions made in the name of national security. But intelligence gathering was not solely about technology. It was intensely personal, a tastrous battle of the wits, Fort Hunt, P.O. Box 1142 would later attest. This key interrogation center for German prisoners challenged conventional notions of intelligence extraction. The individuals stationed there provided crucial pieces of the jigsaw puzzle to win the war. One such figure was Rudy Pins, a translator at Fort Hunt, who later went to Nuremberg. There, he experienced firsthand the post-trial demeanor of Hermann Göring, held at the Camp Ashkan interrogation center in Augsburg. Pins observed Göring not browbeaten but seeking cigarettes, still holding pride in the Luftwaffe he helped build. George Frenkel, another Fort Hunt veteran, emphasized their non-violent methods, a point proudly asserted by these hillbillies, the code name for the Pentagon program bringing Germans to sort and analyze data at *. The Hill sought, these men never compromised their humanity, proving that torture was not the most effective means of intelligence extraction. Braids. These men never compromised their humanity, proving that torture was not the most effective means of intelligence. Cite in the Hill's Bins Preminer. Henry Kolm, later a renowned MIT scientist and co-founder of the MIT Magnet Lab, reflected on how Fort Hunt taught him about running a team and about organizing things, skills he even applied when playing chess with Colonel Rudolf Hess, the commandant of Auschwitz. After the war, the transition from battlefield intelligence to meticulous document analysis was spearheaded by entities like the German Military Documents Section, GMDS. Successor to Myers, this body processed the deluge of captured materials, further understanding the intricacies of the defeated enemy. Meanwhile, some high-value targets were captured in more dramatic fashion, like General Ulrich Kessler, who arrived in America aboard the surrendered submarine U-234. IT intelligence also came from unexpected quarters, like the cables of Nazi actions, sent by Oshima to his Japanese government, intercepted and decipher. Even the remnants of German intelligence, like General Gehlen and his staff, codenamed the *Bolero Group, were eventually utilized. The expertise gained at *P.O. Box 1142 profoundly shaped the post-war lives of its veterans. George Mandel, a chemist there, became a celebrated professor at George Washington University. Fred Michel, an engineer, rose to Deputy Chief of Manufacturing for the U.S. on Bard's Army. Their reunion in August 2006, the first in 60 years, underscored the enduring bond and the hidden legacy of their wartime service. John Gunther Dean went on to a distinguished diplomatic career, playing a key role in the Paris peace talks for Vietnam. Arno Meyer, is straight-in-9 historian at Princeton University, his wartime experience informing his academic work on Nazis. John Klug, served at Fort Hunt, became one of the richest men in America, selling his Metromedia empire for an estimated $4.50 billion in the mid-1980s. Peter Weiss, a human rights lawyer, later utilized universal jurisdiction to hold individuals accountable for abuses, a stark contrast to the venomous anti-Jewish rhetoric of Der Stürmer, Julius Streicher's newspaper, whose editor was ultimately convicted of crimes against Humanität. The stories of these veterans, many of whom were dying at a rate of 30 every hour by October 2007, reveal a profound truth, that the lessons learned in the crucible of war, especially the battle of wits, continued to resonate